Morning children. So in the previous lesson we have seen Earth is more spherical in shape, and earlier people believed Earth as a flat body. There were people like Copernicus, then Galileo Galilei, who tried to prove Earth is a round in shape. Ferdinand Magellan was a Portuguese sailor who sailed from Spain across the world, and he took around 3 years time for his team to complete the journey and make it as a proof that Earth is a round in shape. Then the astronauts and the people like Neil Armstrong and Edwin Aldrin, who went to the moon, and the astronauts who go to the space have taken photographs from the moon, and it also proved that Earth is round in shape. Okay, so let us consider this as a Earth. Let us consider that as a Earth. Now, on this Earth, we have 2 points. 1, 2. Right? So this is on the top part and this is the bottom part. Or this is called the North Pole and this is called the South Pole. Okay? This is called the North Pole and this is called the South Pole. Right? There is a line. There is a line that passes through the center of the Earth. Okay, see, this North Pole is an imaginary point, South Pole is also an imaginary point, and these are imaginary lines. Imaginary lines means they are not actually there on that, but when we make a globe or draw a map, we use these kinds of techniques. Okay, so we draw a line which divides Earth into 2 equal parts. 2 equal parts, and this line is called equator. Right? So this line that divides Earth into 2 equal parts is called the equator. Now, this line divides Earth into 2 equal parts. Which are they? This is 1, this is a 2, isn't it? Right? So this is to the north of equator, this is to the south of equator, is it? This is on the north of equator, this is to the south of equator. So as this is to the north of equator, we call this northern hemisphere. Northern hemisphere, and this to the south of the equator is called southern hemisphere. Right? So the part of Earth to the north of equator is called the northern hemisphere. The part of the Earth to the south of equator is called the southern hemisphere. Hemisphere means half of a sphere. So the entire Earth is a spherical shape, right? So it's a sphere. So it is half. Okay? So this is a half, this is another half, the second half. That's why they are known as a hemisphere. So the northern part is called the northern hemisphere and the southern part is called the southern hemisphere. When we observe the globe or the map, we can see a lot of continents are basically in this part. Okay, Asia is in the northern hemisphere, North America is in northern hemisphere, then Europe is in northern hemisphere, a good part of Africa and South America also is in the northern hemisphere. Okay, so as there are more land in the northern hemisphere, the northern hemisphere is also known as a land hemisphere. It is also called the land hemisphere, and this part, the southern hemisphere, is more of oceans. So that is also known as a ocean hemisphere. Right? So northern hemisphere has most of the continents of the earth, and that is why it is called the land hemisphere. And southern hemisphere has most of the oceans of the world, and that is why it is known as the water hemisphere. Okay, that is land, and this is not ocean, it is a water hemisphere. Right? So northern hemisphere is known as a land hemisphere because it has most of the continental part of the world, the earth. The southern hemisphere is known as the water hemisphere because it has most of the ocean part of the world. Right? So in this part, we are going to learn about the different movements of the earth. So earth as a planet has got two types of movements. First is called rotation, and the second is called revolution. So we will see them one by one, right? So as we saw, this is a model of the earth, and there is a north pole and a south pole, and there is an imaginary axis. There is an imaginary axis which passes through the north pole and the south pole on which the earth rotates. Okay, so the movement of the earth on its own axis is called rotation. But as far as the earth is concerned, when it comes to the movement, rotation, we need to consider the north pole not exactly on the top, and this, it has got a 66.5 degree angulation. It comes like this. Okay, so it comes like this. Right? So this is the angle. This is the angle in which we have this axis. And on this axis, the earth moves from west to east. Okay, in this direction. Right? So the movement of the earth on its axis, which is tilted by 66.5 degree. This is 90 degree, na? This is a 66.5 degree. Right? So the axis which is tilted to a 66.5 degree is on which the earth has its first movement, and that is called rotation. The rotation of the earth is actually from west to east. Okay? And the time taken for one complete rotation is 24 hours. The time taken for one complete rotation is 24 hours, and that is what we call as 1 day. Okay, so the time taken for the earth to complete one rotation is simply 1 day, which has got 24 hours in that. Okay, so this is because of this rotation of this earth, some part of the earth gets sunlight and other parts are darkness. Okay, so the day and night is actually formed because of this particular movement of the earth called the rotation. Right? So days and nights are formed because of the rotation movement of the earth, because when the earth rotates, what happens is if the sun is located here, the sun rays comes out of here, it falls on the earth, and this part of the earth will receive the sunlight, and that part is known as a day, and the other part which doesn't receive the sunlight is known as a night. Okay, so the total duration taken by the earth to complete one particular rotation is 24 hours, or that is called 1 day. So the rotation of the earth is happening on an imaginary line that connects or pass through the north pole and the south pole, that is called the axis, and it is tilted by 66.5 degree to the east. Right? Now, the second movement of the earth is called a revolution. So as we know, as the earth rotates on its own axis, it has another movement around the sun also. Isn't it? So imagine this is the sun and this is the earth. Okay. So the earth, as it rotates on its own axis, the earth moves around the sun also. Right? So this movement of the earth around the sun is called a revolution. Right? The movement of the earth on its own axis is called a rotation. The movement of the earth around the sun is called a revolution. And the time taken to and the direction is again from west to east. Right? Now, the time taken for one complete revolution is 365 days and 6 hours. Right? For the earth to complete one particular revolution, to come back to the same place where it was earlier, it takes 365 days and 6 hours. So once in 4 years, what happens is, so 365.6, 365.6, 365.6 and 365.6. So now here what happens is, this become 1 day, isn't it? 24 hours is 1 day. Okay, so usually what we calculate is, we consider 365 days in a year, and on the 4th year, this day will be added. Means this 18 hours in the previous 3 years will be added here, and then we get a leap year. Okay, right? So the total time taken for a revolution to complete it is 365 days and 6 hours. So when we calculate this 6 hours together once in 4 years, we will have 1 day extra. That makes it 366, and that is called a leap year. Okay? And which month do we add this particular day? Yeah, it's added to the month of February. Right? Okay. Now, what are the advantages or use that we have with the movement of this earth around the sun? We know day and night is caused because of a rotation of the earth, and we have seasons. We have seasons as the earth moves around the sun. Right? So, which are the major seasons that we have? We have summer, we have winter, we have spring, we have autumn. Okay, for the 4 major seasons that we have are summer, winter, spring and autumn. Right? So summer season, winter season, spring season and autumn season are the 4 major seasons that we have, and these seasons are caused because the earth moves around the sun. And at different parts, when we reach, for example, here it's very long, here it will be short, here again the distances change. So because of this changes in the distances that the earth finds itself from the sun, we have different seasons. Okay, so the earth has 2 major movements, rotation and revolution. Rotation is the movement of the earth on its own axis, that is tilted by 66.5 degree to the east. It rotates from west to east. We get days and nights because of that. The total duration for the earth to complete one rotation is 24 hours or 1 day. The second movement of the earth is Revolution. Revolution is the movement of the earth around the sun. It takes 365 days and 6 hours to complete one revolution. This 6 hours every year is calculated as one single day in every 4 years. And when we calculate in that way, we get 1 day extra on every 4th year. We call that a leap year, and this day will be added to the month of February, which makes it to have 29 days. So, the revolution of the earth causes seasons. The major seasons that we have are summer, winter, spring and autumn. Okay. So, the next is some lines that we draw on the globe.